The Iron Age extends from around 700 BC to around AD 400, so it's just over 2,000 years ago. And what we know that people were eating a great variety of plant foods, and that's what I'm particularly interested in investigating. The main crops that they were eating were barley and wheat. They're a bit like some of the barleys and wheats we eat today, but a much greater variety. So the type of barley we eat now is a hulled barley, but also there's a different type, a six-row barley, a naked barley, and that's what we're seeing at this time. There's more variety in the types of crops that people are eating. What we find in archaeology are the ingredients. So we find little seeds and grains and nutshell, but we don't find usually the food products. But what we're trying to do is piece together the different pieces of bits of information we have to try and work out what foods could be created. So certainly with the barley, it has many uses. It can be used in stews, much like we have Irish stew today, the pot barley. We know it was used in brewing, which would have been very important in the Iron Age, making ale. And also what we're trying out here today is making it into barley bread, which has a long tradition in Ireland, but has fallen out of favour in the last few centuries. What we find very often in archaeological excavations are the tiny fragmentary remains of plants. And people often don't think these sort of things would survive. They're too tiny, they're too fragile. But what happens if plants are maybe cooked over a fire or dried over a fire, so when you're making some sort of food product, sometimes they can come in contact with the fire and become burnt. And in certain circumstances, sometimes they'll just combust and turn to ash, but sometimes they will burn and be preserved in the soil for thousands of years. So what I do is I look at bags of soil from archaeological excavations, and I look at pick out these tiny seeds and grains and work out if it's barley or wheat or all the different types of foods that people were eating in the past. They would have had a good variety of foods, certainly. Barley and wheat were the main crops. We find lots of evidence for nuts, hazelnut, primary one, different types of fruits and berries, and of course wild foods. A lot of plants that we would now consider to be weeds would have been very useful as plant foods in the past. And also these weeds would have been very good for medicines and lots of other uses. So almost every plant that someone would have encountered in Iron Age Ireland would have had some potential use.